Hi guys, Vipin here. Uh, let's continue about public finance. Little bit left in this unit. Like I said, it's a very general topic and something which everyone must know. Now, last video I was telling you about VAT, the sources of revenue for the government, and the different types of budgets that's there in India. Okay, in this video we'll talk about the planned expenditure, the unplanned expenditure, and public debt. Okay, so let's get started off with planned expenditure. Planned expenditure, like the name says, this is already part of India's budget. The government has previously allotted a certain amount of money for every category. Okay, so that's what you here refer to as planned expenditure. The first one there are economic services. Now, if the government wants to go about putting up, say, an irrigation project, they would have already put this across in the budget saying that an irrigation project of so many acres is going to cost us so many crores. Now, there is an economic service that they are doing. Okay. Other examples of economic services include, say, the construction of dams, laying out of highways, the tarring of highways, the construction of highways, all that gets categorized as economic services. Okay. Other activities which are considered planned: social services, the various poverty alleviation programs that you have come across in the previous unit. Now all that gets categorized as a social service. Okay. Then general services. General services include those, for example, say the government of India is required to run different prisons. Okay. Now the running of these prisons in fact is a very expensive task. Okay. So in order to go about looking after the cost, that's something which is already decided in the budget. Now, central assistance to the state plans. A good example for this would be recently the Maharashtra government inaugurated the first monorail. Okay. Now the construction of this monorail actually cost them 14,000 crores. Now for that, the entire funding wasn't made available by the Maharashtra government entirely. It was in fact partly funded by the central government. Okay. Now, central assistance to union territory plans. Union territories don't have a government per se to look after the costs and look after the budget. So here you have the central government that allots resources for this particular part of India. Okay. Now, apart from planned expenses, the other type of expenses you come across are the non-planned expenses. The first one there is civil expenditure. A good example for civil expenditure would be maintaining law and order. Now, if you consider situations in India where you would come across riots happening, okay, when riots go about happening, you don't really know when it might actually occur and to what extent it might go about happening. In that case, the government needs to bear the cost. If, say, a policeman ends up getting injured, the cost of rehabilitating him, the cost of repairing property which has been damaged, all that is something which the government needs to bear. So if you're come across people protesting by burning down buses or in fact damaging trains, remember it's the taxpayers' money which is in fact going to be used in order to fix what has been damaged. So in fact you are creating a loss to the government if you go about protesting and disrupting law and order in the country. Other cases for civil expenditure. Now when you come across, say for example, let me consider a morbid example here, that would be a murder. Let's consider the Arushi murder trial that happened in New Delhi. Now in that case, the Talwar family had lawyers who were fighting from their side, and the state of Delhi was fighting from their side as well. The state of Delhi, the Attorney General, if I'm not wrong, he gets a salary by the Delhi government. Now, they are paid depending upon how many cases they have and the volume of work they have. So when the volume of work changes, the amount of income they earn in fact varies. Hence, that's a case of civil expenditure which is considered non-planned. Moving on, defense expenditure. India's defense expenditure is in fact increasing continuously. The reason being, of course, our neighbors are not so friendly with us. We already have issues with Sri Lanka. We've always had issues with Pakistan, and now even China is slowly starting to be a threat for us. I really hope we don't end up getting into another war with any of these countries, because it's going to impact our resources significantly and hamper the growth of this country when you come across a situation like war. Okay. Interest payments. Now, why is interest payment being categorized as a non-planned expenditure? Isn't interest rate fixed? Not really. If you consider a type of security which is issued by governments, which are called as gilt-edged securities, the interest rate on a gilt-edged security is in fact linked to inflation. Now, if I have a bond which I bought from Government of India by paying 1 lakh rupees, and the interest payment on that is linked to inflation, in other words, they're actually referred to as a gilt-edged security. If inflation were to be, say, 7%, I would be getting 7% on 1 lakh rupees. However, inflation goes up to, say, 10%, I would be getting 10% as the rate of interest for my investment. Hence, they categorize that as a non-planned expenditure. Not all the time do you come across interest payments to be fixed. Then, subsidies. In recent news, you came across how Government of India changed the rules for LPG subsidy. Previously, they said 9 cylinders in a year will be subsidized. However, now the new rule has 12 cylinders in a year which will be subsidized. Okay. Now, subsidized products are those wherein the part of the cost which the end consumer needs to pay is in fact borne by the government. Some heavily subsidized commodities include diesel and kerosene. There are other commodities as well which are subsidized, which the common man doesn't really use to a large extent. Farmers, for example, when it comes to buying farm equipment or even fertilizer, all that happens to be something which the government pays for in small amounts, and hence they are called as subsidized. Then you have loans and advances. Now, in the recent news, the Maharashtra government again requested funds from the central government because they wanted to upgrade the infrastructure within the state. Mumbai alone is going to get several hundred crores for infrastructure development. Now, this is a case where Government of India didn't really plan this in the budget of 2013. Now Maharashtra government has requested them funds for the sake of development, and hence that gets categorized as a non-planned expenditure. Now, moving on to debt. Public debt here refers to borrowings from the government. Okay, where does the government actually borrow money from? Remember, I'm using the word borrow money. Now, when I say borrow money, the government is obligated to repay this. The first case you would come across there is internal debt. Now, the total value of internal debt in the country is little over 48 crores as of 31st March 2013. Added to the interest value, 48 crores, remember, is on 31st March 2013, last year. The amount is required to be repaid in 31st of March this year. 48 lakh crore is now going to come to a value of 54 lakh crore. That's the amount of money Government of India has borrowed from its citizens. Okay. External debt. External debt is the amount of money Government of India owes to other countries. Could be America, could be Japan. In fact, when I told you the monorail which has been built in Mumbai, the funding of the monorail has been partially provided by the Japanese government. Now, in that case as well, that gets categorized as external debt because it is something which we are borrowing from another country. The total value of external debt which India has to repay as of 31st March 2014 is about $172 billion. Okay, $172 billion. Okay. Other liabilities of public debt. Now, for example, if I were to consider Provident Fund. Let me tell you what Provident Fund is, and I'll link it up to how Government of India owes us money on that regard. If you're a salaried individual, a part of your salary is in fact deducted and the equal contribution has been made by your employer, and the amount of money goes to a Government of India account. This is what people refer to as Provident Fund. Now, to open a provident fund account, you need not be a salaried individual. Anyone can open a provident fund account. It's also known as a public provident fund account. This is a way in which you can mandatorily force an employee to go about saving money. How it works is, in my case, if I'm not wrong, around 1,000 rupees is deducted from my account, and my employer also contributes 1,000 rupees from his account. So I'm forced to save 2,000 rupees every month. Now, this amount of money goes to the Government of India Public Provident Fund account, and I'm able to earn an interest rate of 8.75% per annum. This is what they refer to as other liabilities, and the major one here includes Provident Fund. You may have come across long lines in the local post office where a lot of senior citizens would have made investments in post office savings accounts. Even that is considered as other liabilities which Government of India has with its citizens. Okay. Now, why do we have so much of public debt? Why is the government forced to borrow from different sources? Aren't the revenue from within the country good enough? Not really. Now, here are the reasons why it's not good enough. Firstly, development plans. The monorail which they put up in Mumbai cost 14,000 crores. Okay, 14,000 crores. You can imagine how expensive this number is. Now, 14,000 crores is the amount of money Government of India spends in a year for education in the country. Now, when I say education in the country, I mean for all the government schools, all the government colleges, the teacher's salary, the uniforms of the students, the textbooks, everything. 14,000 crores is the amount of money they spend in a year. Now, that's something they've invested for a monorail in Mumbai. You can imagine how difficult it's going to be to recover the costs within a short period of time. It's not possible, in fact. So development plans is always a cost. So in order to develop the country, they don't usually have resources within themselves, and hence they're required to borrow from different sources. Disliking of taxes. Many people don't pay taxes, and there are many ways in which people can avoid paying taxes legally. Now remember, I'm using the word here, avoiding paying taxes, and not evasion of tax. Evasion of tax is a criminal offense. Avoiding of tax is in fact something which many people do, and even the government gives you avenues to avoid paying taxes. Now let's say, for example, I'm supposed to pay 5,000 rupees per annum as my income tax. Now what is it I'm going to do in order to avoid paying 5,000 rupees as my income tax? One common way people go about avoiding paying taxes is put money in different tax saving schemes. Now let's say I put in 10,000 rupees in a tax saving scheme. Now for putting 10,000 rupees in a tax saving scheme, my liability of 5,000 rupees in the form of the tax that I need to pay, is reduced to about 4,000 rupees. Now, if I were to take more and more plans wherein I reduce my overall tax liability, the amount of money I'm supposed to pay to the government reduces considerably. Even though I'm an individual who can go about paying taxes, I can reduce the amount of money I owe the government. So that's the case of disliking taxes. Let me remind you the example of McDonald's again. How they avoided paying taxes by simply calling a product as soft serve and not really ice cream. In case you missed that point, go to the previous video of Public Finance Part 1. I've explained that case in detail. Okay. Control of inflation. Now, Government of India does a variety of methods in order to control inflation. One of the methods that they do, which is quite common to control inflation, would be to hike the rate of interest. Okay. Now, previously it was RBI which would hike the rate of interest, that is the interest that is there on loans. Now, however, the respective banks have got the authority to increase or decrease the rate of interest on loans. Now, let me take an example here. When I go about taking a loan from the government, I'm in fact contributing to the economy of this country. How does that work? Now, I'm interested to buy a car. Now, the current rate of interest, I'm assuming, is say 10% on an automobile loan. 10% according to me is very affordable. I go ahead with an automobile loan. Money from my pocket now goes to the bank because I'm repaying this loan. The bank in fact circulates the money into the economy, and when more and more people like me apply for a loan, there is more money available in the economy. Now, if I were to see a spike in the interest rate, the government in fact sees the interest rate, the inflation in fact doing badly, and they in fact indirectly hint the banks to hike the rate of interest. 10%, in fact, the bank shoot it up to say 12%. If it were to go to 12%, a lot of people, myself included, would think twice to go for an automobile loan. So what happens there? The amount of money in circulation reduces, and therefore the government doesn't have enough money in order to go about looking after the different costs, and hence they're required to borrow from different sources for that. Then low taxable capacity. I am one of the very few people who pay income tax. Now, why do I say that? We are a population of 1.21 billion. 1.21 billion people in the country. Okay, and how many people in this 1.21 billion go about paying income tax? Okay, the number of people who pay income tax in this country is just 33 million. 33 million people. 33 million people doesn't even equal to 3% of this entire country. So that's how low we're talking when it comes to the taxable capacity. I told you in a previous video, the minimum amount of exemption that you would get, the income tax slab, starts at 2 lakh rupees. Meaning if you're earning 2 lakh rupees, you need not go about paying taxes. Most of India doesn't earn that limit. In other words, we are very low in terms of our earning capacity, that the IT law doesn't even look at us and go about asking any tax money from our side. Then, mounting defense expenditure. I already told you how we are facing threats from China and from Pakistan quite regularly, and we need to mount our defense in order to show them who's boss. Meeting emergencies. No one saw the Uttarakhand floods happen. No one saw the earthquake of Gujarat coming by. When you saw such natural disasters happening, it's going to be a very expensive thing in order to rebuild the cities which have been damaged from these emergencies. This could even include riots such as the unfortunate Muzaffarnagar riots in Uttar Pradesh. All this in fact is a cost to the government. And there, since they have a shortage of revenue, they're forced to borrow from different sources and set things right. I hope I've made the concept of public finance clear. If you have any queries, please leave them in the comment section. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And also, please go about subscribing to my videos. Thank you guys. Have a nice day.